Yeah, it's like, I don't know. I don't think they went about it in the best way, but similar to what the Eagles did with Rager and then and then, like getting AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. Like, I think you just want as many shots on goal at the receiver position as possible. They definitely overpaid for Claypool, but I like their approach to try to get weapons for Fields, I think makes sense. But man, that was Claypool. I don't know why that was the guy they set their sights on.
I totally understand trying to get somebody to throw the ball, because without any pass catchers, you're in trouble. What I'm saying though is, like, the Eagles gave up 5 first round pick for AJ Brown, but they knew that they were getting a bona fide number one receiver, like legitimate number one receiver. When it comes, you know what I mean? They knew what they were getting. They knew exactly with Chase Claypool. They kind of knew what they were getting, and they gave up a second after he was not living up to second round value. Like, I would say give up a fourth maybe for Claypool at the time. Seems about right.
Yeah, we don't disagree about this at all. It's the strategy I agree with. The execution that I think is a disaster.
Yeah, execution's been an issue.
I mean, this is the team that also drafted Velus Jones. I don't know who they have evaluating wide receivers.
Yeah, they drafted They drafted a 90-year-old.
They did draft a 90-year-old who was not good in college.
Just like a straight project play.
And I mean, I don't want to go beyond that draft because that was Ryan Poles' first draft. Beyond that, I mean, they made some egregious picks, but it wasn't him doing it.
Is he still on the team? He is.
Yeah, he played a couple snaps last week.
All right, let's do it.
He stinks.
Hey, good morning. Welcome to the Stokastic.com NFL Showdown strategy show on a Thursday morning. And we've got a barn burner for you. Washington Commanders hosting the Chicago Bears. Get stoked, people. I'll tell you what, though. Why would we not get excited for these games? I'm dead serious, right? A lot of Thursday night games are bad anyway. A lot of the matchups look good on paper going into the season, and they end up being terrible. Case in point, look at the Denver Broncos last year. Just terrible. We had to suffer through the Denver Broncos every week last year. It didn't matter, though. That's why DFS showdown slates are so fun. And personally, this is just one man's opinion, I love the bad type of games for DFS better than having to figure out how to jam players from a Kansas City Buffalo matchup where it's like, okay, you can play 2 good players and the rest are punts. So we're going to talk about it as we always do. No stone unturned here on the strategy show. Glad to have you guys with us. I'm Dave Loughran at Lafayette_D on the Twitters, LOUGHY_D, joined by Matt Gajewski at Matt_Gajewski. Got a fun one, man. What's up?
Definitely a fun one. I'm with you on the bad games being showdown slates. On a main slate, unless you're running 150 lineups, you probably don't end up with many Bears or Commanders in your lineup. But on a showdown, we get to dissect it. We get to go in the weeds, talk about Equanimous, St. Brown, Brian Pringle, and all these deep guys. And then from an on-field perspective, I don't know, Justin Fields, Sam Howell, both these guys can run. Both of them are somewhat erratic. This could make for either a really bad game or a really exciting one, and I hope we get the latter.
Yeah, man. Would you be shocked if this game shot out, though? I actually wouldn't.
Dude, the Bears' defense is horrible.
Terrible. Jalen Johnson out, Eddie Jackson out.
Yeah, your 2 best guys in the secondary.
Yeah. And it's funny because in most cases you'd be like, oh, what's it matter? You know, they're not, like, this team's bad anyway, but it just makes things even worse. And of course they both missed last game too, but this is ugly. Washington relatively healthy, coming off an impressive performance last week, took the Eagles to overtime. I don't know if you saw that, by the way.
I did. It was awesome. Surprising, but I mean, glad the Eagles got it done.
I wasn't loving it personally.
For sure.
But the fact that the time didn't, and I'm not saying this is wrong, but the fact that Howe got the ball out And then there was one, they added a second, but there was 1 second left on the clock for another play, which turned into a touchdown to take it to overtime. Was crazy because I think he snapped the ball with like 5 seconds. I looked at my father-in-law and I go, all right, last play of the game, stop him here. And it wasn't the last play of the game, but that's a divisional spot. I try not to read too much into stuff week over week. Like if you want to look at Miami dropping 70 against Buffalo or against Denver, and then the next week, Buffalo coming in and just taking a huge dump straight on them, 48-20. So many games week over week in the NFL are just different than you would have expected. Like from a betting angle, I do the betting show every week. You do college football. I think college football is different in this respect. But there's certain spots that you could make the argument for. But like, you know what I was thinking, Matt? What if, because I liked the Titans last week. Full disclosure, I liked them the week before. But what if the Titans, because the Titans this week are 1.5 point favorites on the road against the Colts. What if this Titans-Colts game was immediately after the Titans-Browns game where the Browns destroyed them? I guarantee the public would look at that game differently than if they were coming off a beatdown at home over the Cincinnati Bengals.
Absolutely. You can see overreactions, especially when we're still dealing with small samples early in the year. You can only work with the data you have. So it's good to fall back on context like what you just provided to help make some of your decisions in football. And ultimately, this is a game of adjustments. And I think that's why we see so many ebbs and flows. You get information for a team, and then the next week, their opponent has that information as well to make adjustments to it. I think the perfect example of that is Buffalo and Miami, where Buffalo did a pretty good job holding Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle in check. And then you see guys like Braxton Berrios nearly lead the team in targets. That flat out can happen if you're Miami, but great adjustment from the Bills. And I mean, like lining style, I can't even remember the corner's name that was Stephon Diggs was primarily playing against, but he absolutely cooked that dude. Just a great performance game plan wise from Buffalo. And I think you do see that a lot of times week to week in the NFL. It's the highest level. And to your point, unlike college, where a lot of teams just run their scheme and that's their scheme the whole year, the adjustments are super important at the highest level of football. And you definitely see that week in, week out.
Yeah, without question. 7 targets, 3 touchdowns for Stephon Diggs.
For a second, when you said 7 targets, I thought you were going to talk about Braxton Berrios. Is about ready to faint.
Saint Steven, what's up, brother? He says, I've got a long drive this afternoon, so going to download this and the 11 a.m. marathon show to listen on the ride. Cheers, everyone. Yeah, you got it right. Said he might have a catheter in. It's a wise decision if you're listening to the marathon show. Comment God said, I bought the contest sim lineup build, well, it's the contest generator and the lineup simulator. Hope it kills. Me too, brother. I had some real nice finishes in single entry with that, with our content or lineup simulator last week. Going to keep it moving. I definitely like to make some ROI boosts on it, de-boosted boost and inject some of my personal thoughts in, and then take the best simulated ROI lineups from that. I'm finding my footing with that as well. And with such small sample sizes, you got to be careful not to overcorrect. But yeah, link to all of that stuff if you guys wanted to jump in the description as well. The Stochastic NFL Sims Max package for the month, or the data package, which is just the same thing outside of you can't generate as many lineups. All of that down in the description. You're getting every single tool that we have. There are no more add-ons necessary. You don't buy a package and then you got to get add-ons to get everything. Every single thing is included. Contest generator, lineup simulator, post-contest simulator, which has been huge for me. Ownership, player projections, top stack, boom bust, lineup generator, premium Discord, and Matt, as you and I love it, the top single game and showdown plays tool, basically a simulation tool in and of itself. We're going to use that to guide us today. If you want to get in, you want to check those out, Sims Max package and Sims data monthly package, both of them down there. Check it out, and let's get into this. So first things first, we start with the Chicago Bears. Oh, guys, hit that thumbs up if you haven't done so yet. Much obliged, much appreciated. Take a single second, atone for your sins here on the Strategy Show. Subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below if you're listening or watching after the fact, and check out all our podcast stuff. Don't forget, we have podcast exclusive content. that only goes on podcast every Tuesday and every Friday. I'll tell you, man, Justin Fields in the top plays tool, Justin Fields' top play probability, as we see this with rushing quarterbacks all the time, 29%. No one else is north of 16%, but he's only 14% optimal. Or captain optimal. So 14% likelihood that he's optimal at the captain. No better place to start than right here with Justin Fields today. How are you playing this at his salary?
I did not find the entire slate to be particularly tight in terms of pricing. It's definitely not as loose as that New York showdown we had on Monday, but you can get Fields pretty easily. I think you feel good about some of the value plays, and there's enough of them where you can mix and match. So it's not really a question of whether I want Fields or not. It's, to your point, where do we want to play him? And generally speaking, I fall back on our tools for this quite a bit. The simulation tools do a great job of this. He is providing more positive leverage in the utility spot. And I think there's a lot of ways that you can play this. Maybe you use a pass catcher up top for Fields. If all that production is isolated to, say, like a DJ Moore, and then the touchdowns come through the air, not the ground, maybe that's a way Fields still enters your lineup in the optimal, but isn't the captain. Maybe he has solid rushing production, but it's Khalil Herbert punching in the touchdowns. And from a price-adjusted standpoint, that's what gets you there. Or maybe straight up it goes to a shootout and Sam Howell just outscores him and you want Fields in your lineup still capturing all those points regardless. He's such a big part of the offense, rushing and throwing, where it's not a question of, all right, let's maybe play someone else over him. I think we want him in our lineups, but you just need to be careful about how you construct your lineups with him. Right now, if the slate started in 5 minutes, I think I would primarily have him in the flex.
I don't hate the idea either of going Justin Fields and Commanders defense. Not even a little bit.
Definitely live.
Right? Like pick six, strip sack to the house. This offensive line, let's not forget, we talked about their secondary, but this offensive line is banged up as well, right? They lost 2 starters to the IR. Tevin Jenkins, who was the other one? Can't remember who the other one was.
Back. Do you have a read on Tevin's status tonight? He's been practicing in full, but that doesn't necessarily mean he'll return coming off of, he's been hurt his whole career, man.
Yeah.
Has he ever been healthy?
I don't think so.
He left Oklahoma State with a back injury and then has never been able to really get on the field consistently.
It actually looks like he might play today. You're right.
But I don't know. I don't know for sure. I mean, sometimes you see guys really ease back in. The Bears aren't really playing for anything.
Yeah, I also don't know how much it's going to matter. Was Braxton Jones the other one that got, I think, the IR?
Yeah, I believe so.
Either way, you could see some pressure here. You could see Justin Fields turning the ball over. But also, you might see a lot of running from him today. I know we haven't seen as much of that lately. It's still there, though. It is still 100% there. It's also a Washington team that's given up some significant production to rushing quarterbacks over the last couple of weeks, not just on the ground, but through the air. Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Justin Fields is a far cry from either of those guys as a passer, but in the flex spot seems to make sense. Now, if you're doing that, are we talking more Commanders at captain, or are we talking like DJ Moore, Cole Kmet coming off a 2-touchdown game, Khalil Herbert commanding almost all of the opportunities in that backfield? People talking about Roschon Johnson being the guy sooner than later. You're going to have to wait another. You're going to have to wait another week because Khalil Herbert was taking every opportunity almost in that game.
Yeah, I don't think Roschon's taking over just yet. Khalil Herbert efficient too, so it's not like Roschon put him on ice and they're just deferring to the veteran. Khalil Herbert played well. Roschon's still very young in his career. I think better days are ahead, but probably going to take some time for him. He's only been playing running back for 2 years. He was a quarterback at Texas and switched to the position. So a lot of the dirty work, things like pass blocking, he's not quite there yet, whereas Khalil Herbert's been playing this position since he was a kid. He's just a far more fluid back and trustworthy in situations where games are competitive, you need pass blocking and pass catching. So it's no slight to Roschon. I think Khalil Herbert's just a little safer in that regard. Anyway, to your question on how you play this, if you don't have Fields as your captain, I think you can certainly look to Commanders at captain, and I believe they're going a little under-owned. They are a 6-point favorite. Total's pretty good here. You could see a lot of points put up on this Washington side. And Fields, the turnover-prone quarterback that he is, maybe gives this offense short fields. I have a ton of interest in Howell at captain, the pass catchers, as well as some of the backs. We'll discuss that team later. But if you're not going Commanders at the captain, I think your first player you probably look at is DJ Moore. Similar price to Fields, at least in the same range. And when they're throwing the ball through the air, he should see a lion's share of targets. It hasn't always worked that way, but it's small samples generally with Fields through the air. Last week he had a monster game. That was positive to see. My third captain I would get to for the Bears is Khalil Herbert for the reasons you mentioned. He's really interesting because he's not the same price. And he's a guy that could give you a different construction, if that makes sense. He's a little cheaper than Fields in particular. So he's a guy I'm toying around with at captain just because he saves you like $1,500 off more and a little bit more than that with Fields.
Yeah, somebody like Khalil Herbert is fascinating. Now, also, Roschon Johnson does have 3 goal line carries on the season. He got one last week. He's just not heavily involved. Maybe there's opportunities there. Again, I don't believe Herbert has a single goal line carry this season. Understandably, one of those goal line carries came against Green Bay, or 2 of them for Johnson came against Green Bay in what you would consider garbage time, although Fields was still on the field. But yeah, Khalil Herbert's price point isn't crazy, 8,600. DJ Moore is expensive. And by the way, Tanner, if the question you had, where's the promo for Owner's Box? If you're signing up on Owner's Box to get a free week of all of our tools, I assume that's what you're talking about. Just if you use the link in the description, you don't need a promo code. Just use the link. It might ask you for a promo code. You don't need it. The link will do the exact same thing. So don't worry about that. All right, thanks. So DJ Moore coming off by far his best game as a Chicago Bear last game. 8 receptions on 9 targets, 131 yards, a touchdown. Granted, coming against the Denver defense that is as lifeless as you could ever imagine, especially after the season they had last year. They kept this Denver team from being a 17-week embarrassment. That's the only reason, was the defense. And they still lost a ton of games. But man, I'll tell you what, DJ Moore at that price point compared to Terry McLaurin and some of the other guys, here's the issue I have, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, clearly in a better spot. They're 6-point favorites at home against just a putrid, banged-up secondary. This is where I want to kind of get into the weeds a little bit. The target share on the season for the Washington Commanders is so spread out. Now, last week, it was a little bit more condensed. It was Terry McLaurin, it was Jahan Dotson, who had 4 red zone targets, by the way. But on the season, it's been pretty damn spread out. Listen to this. So through the first 4 weeks, target share for the Washington Commanders, I know I'm jumping around a little bit here, but bear with me. 19.8% McLaurin, 19% Dotson, 15% Samuel, 14% Logan Thomas. Like, there's 4 guys there between 14 and 19%.
It's kind of the same with Chicago. It's not too much different. You got DJ Moore at 21, Cole Kmet at 21. Then you have Darnell Mooney at 14-ish. From there, it gets a little gross. There's less guys in there, but
yeah, you're right.
Aside from last week, it has not been the DJ Moore show. And I still don't know what Getsy's doing with the offense. 1 week he runs Fields 7 times. Last week he runs him 3 times. Maybe that's defensible because Fields was having so much success through the air. But one week DJ Moore is the focal point of the pass game. The next week it's like Chase Claypool had 14 targets prior to his banishment from the offense. Like, why does he have so many targets? I mean, Darnell Mooney's had a couple decent target outings. I don't think there's really a condensed target share on either team, which honestly I love for tournaments. I do believe, in our tool show this, like DJ Moore is one of the most negatively leveraged players on the slate for us, but people are going to click him into the captain. They're going to click him into lineups. But to this point in the season, what has been the real difference between him and Cole Kmet and Darnell Mooney? The gaps aren't wide, and in pricing they are. So you can make some pretty interesting lineups off the board, lineups that are going to be contrarian, say for you guys like playing the Millie Maker, that I think are more live than they normally would be today. I personally am still going to play a little bit of this DJ Moore expensive captain occasionally in my lineups because we know he has the highest ceiling. But if you want to make a pivot down to Darnell, Cole Kmet, I don't have any issues with that.
That's a good point. Are you a little bit surprised that Darnell Mooney has been so uninvolved to start the year? I mean, Chase Claypool was garnering more opportunities before he became inactive than Darnell Mooney.
Yeah, I'm starting to wonder if we were just wrong on Darnell Mooney basically being the only player in Chicago's offense for a couple seasons. And the second he's surrounded by legitimate competition, maybe he's just not that good. I mean, we're talking about a 5th-round player out of Tulane. It's not like this guy was some stud coming out of college. He was essentially like a one-trick pony deep threat. Maybe Darnell Mooney's just not as good as we thought. I don't know.
Well, he's 170 pounds. So
that's true.
Like he's not big at all. 5'11", one. I saw him walking up to the huddle the other day, and I know he's listed at 5'11", but my God, he looked like Darren Sproles next to some of those guys. I'm not saying that he's not 5'11". I'm also not saying that he is. Like you're going to need to get there on the deep ball with Darnell Mooney. Now, here's the good thing, Matt. On a slate like this, I'm okay taking those chances at his price. I have absolutely zero issue with that whatsoever. If you're talking about Darnell Mooney getting maybe 1 or 2 deep shots, I can get behind that for sure. The only question now is if he's going to get those opportunities, and it's certainly no guarantee, but his ownership. So let's see right now. Darnell Mooney has 3 deep targets this season. He's caught 2 of them, one of them for a touchdown. DJ Moore has 9 deep targets. That's crazy. He has over half of the deep targets that Justin Fields has thrown. Claypool had 3. He's out. I think with Mooney, we're really just banking on hopefully like a long touchdown. I don't really see what else. I don't see any other way you're getting there with the volume or lack of volume that we've seen from Mooney. But that doesn't mean I'm not okay with it. I think it's perfectly fine. Darnell Mooney rips off a 50-yard touchdown at 5K. You're in business.
I agree with you. From a slate context standpoint, what I'm really struggling with is, like what Bears to play. They're a 6-point underdog. The total's decent, 44.5, 45 in some spots, depending on where you look. They're expensive. We only have 2 Bears with positive leverage on the whole slate, Justin Fields and Roschon Johnson. There's not a single Bears pass catcher providing positive leverage according to our tools right now. Not a single tight end. It's literally just the cheap Roschon and Fields himself. We know people, generally speaking, like to play this pretty even, 3-3 builds, 4-2 builds. I'm starting to think that these 5-1 onslaughts in favor of Washington might provide some pretty good leverage on this slate because they're generally under-owned. I think our tools are going to love them. I haven't actually run the Sims yet today. That's later in the day process for me. But man, we have a ton of positively leveraged Washington guys and nobody on the Bears. All this to say, like if you want to play this with Bears stacks and maybe you could also use our tools like the lineup generator and stuff to build alternate spreads. Maybe you think like if you do the Bears win by 6, you're going to get different numbers than this. I think if you force me to pick in that instance, like maybe the Bears win this game outright, I think I'm still going to Justin Fields for sure. Number 2, DJ Moore. Like I don't see a way the Bears win this game outright where he's not involved. And then Khalil Herbert. Guys like Mooney and then the wide receiver 3, Equineme St. Brown, I think are worth sprinkling. But man, the Bears are really hard to evaluate today. Is that kind of how you see it?
Yeah. I mean, I think both teams are hard to evaluate only because like I could make a really good argument for Terry McLaurin, for Jahan Dotson, for Curtis Samuel, for all of those guys. So you're just going to have to hit the right pairing, the right combination. But yeah, I definitely do. But also, man, I've seen a lot of Bears. I can think of several of them off the top of my head. Just Bears showdown primetime slates where it's a long 50-yard touchdown to a guy who gets 2 targets on the day and one of them goes for 50 and a score. And then you need him. It's tough. I mean, Mooney doesn't have negative leverage. He's what, like minus 0.6 or something? It's pretty neutral there. He's just not positively leveraged either. It's pretty neutral.
Yeah, wild with the Bears. Only Roschon and Fields actually getting positive leverage.
I think Roschon's actually a great play in a spot like this. It feels gross for most people, understandably. But what happens if this is just one of those games where it's like, all right, the team is 0-4. Okay. They're 0-4. They've been terrible. They had a significant lead last time out and found a way to squander that. Johnson's participation, his snap share last week went down, and Khalil Herbert basically got all of the work. I think the snap share was probably like 75-25 or something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head. But Johnson did have a goal line carry, like I said. What if they just start doing different stuff in the event that they fall behind? Like, I don't know. What do we have his ownership at compared to Khalil Herbert right now?
Total ownership?
Well, captain ownership and then utility. It's actually not as far as I thought it would be. The only difference is that Roschon Johnson is half the price of Khalil Herbert.
I think you could see him take on more work at some point. To your point on the goal line back stuff, he's bigger than Khalil Herbert. There's no doubt about that. Roschon's like one of the weirdest guys at the position, being a former quarterback, but he's like really good size, over 220 pounds. So he sort of profiles like a goal line back, at least compared to Khalil Herbert, who's not the biggest guy on the team. So I don't know. This is kind of a spot where you could see Khalil Herbert come in positively leveraged too, depending on your individual projection. It's volatile. If you think Khalil Herbert handles the same workload he did last week, I don't think he's as negatively leveraged. If you think it's closer to the year-long split, I agree with these projections, but this is the spot where I think there's probably the most volatility on the entire slate, how you think this Bears backfield plays out. And if you believe Roschon takes on more work or even continues in the same role he's had, he's a very good play at his price.
All right. So then how ultimately are you looking to play this Chicago team? We have, and I'm just going to kind of recap this. I have some thoughts as well, but you're talking about Fields, DJ Moore, both of whom are very expensive. You mentioned DJ Moore in our top single game and showdown plays tool, looking at DraftKings right now, massive negative leverage at that price point. We don't have him as the optimal captain all that often. Actually, the most negatively leveraged play on the slate. Then you've got Khalil Herbert, Cole Kmet. I personally think Cole Kmet at that price is fine because the red zone opportunity is there. We saw it last year. He had multiple 2-touchdown games. We're talking about a showdown slate, so there's not a ton elsewhere to choose from. You know, negatively leveraged, though. Negatively leveraged. Is he negatively leveraged? Slightly in utility, slightly at captain. That's another one of those spots. It's just pretty neutral. And then you're talking Mooney, Roschon Johnson, Equanimous St. Brown. I mean, Tyler Scott at minimum salary. He played last game. Do we need to talk about some of these dirt cheap options down here? The minimum salary guys for Chicago?
Yeah, I think we do. And to your point on Cole Kmet, only two Bears are positively leveraged. Like if you're not playing Fields or Roschon, like you're just going to end up with a negatively, or unless you run like straight 5-1 stacks with Washington the whole day, like you're going to have a negatively leveraged Bears player. It's just the way the slate is today. I like Cole Kmet too. I think he's completely fine. He's tied with DJ Moore in targets, and he does have that red zone opportunity. It's a showdown, and the way pricing is structured, I think you want to at least look at the Bears cheap guys. There's a couple guys on Washington we'll talk about too that sort of fit this mold. But last week, with Chase Claypool banished, Equanimous St. Brown, 42 snaps, 22 routes. Tyler Scott, 14 snaps, 7 routes. I wouldn't be surprised if this gets a little narrower between the two. They get closer in terms of opportunity. Scott is a rookie they drafted out of Cincinnati. He's an explosive downfield player, so he functions in the same role as Equanimous St. Brown, who's just been awful throughout his career. I think Scott is a guy you can throw a dart on, just hoping and praying that Equanimous takes a step back in terms of snaps and route share. But I think both these guys should be in your player pool. And even a guy like Robert Tonyan, they did play a little more 12 personnel last week without Chase Claypool. 19 snaps for Tonyan, 12 routes. For reference, that's more routes than what Tyler Scott had. Those are the pure punt options I would consider for Chicago. They're all going to come in negatively leveraged, but I mean, you're talking about guys that are running single-digit routes. That's just going to be what it is. These are large field tournament plays.
This Bears team is really tough. You're right. This is not easy. How many receivers do we think are going to get snaps today? I mean, Moore, Mooney, Claypool's out, Tyler Scott, ESB, maybe Velus Jones comes in for like a snap or two, but yeah, Moore's going to be out there the whole game. Mooney should be out there a good amount. He's played 70+% of snaps in back-to-back games now. Tyler Scott, what, like 20%? Equanimeous St. Brown played almost 60% of snaps last week.
Yeah. That's in today's day and age, 2023, Equanimeous St. Brown is still receiving snaps.
All right, how about this? If you're talking about the cheap guys here and the ones that are playing between like 20 and 30% of snaps that are real cheap, how would you order them in terms of preference right now? If you're a single entry or like a 3-max player between the ESB, how much is he, by the way?
He's 1,800.
Tyler Scott, Robert Tonyan, Mercedes Lewis, both of whom played around 20 snaps last game. Those guys.
It's really hard not to just say ESB 1 at 18. I mean, 60% of the snaps at that price tag, he's the safest. Scott would be my second favorite, just in the chance that he emerges as that wide receiver 3. We're talking about a rookie who could see an ascending role. I would say Tonyan 4 and then Tonyan 3 and Mercedes Lewis 4. Mercedes, when he's out there, is just strictly a blocker.
Okay. All right. Boy, it's ugly. We're going to build a lineup shortly, but any thoughts on how to get different with this team from a captain standpoint? Like, if you were talking about favorite captain, assuming it's the Bears, I know you talked about potentially going 5-1 Washington. What do you think your favorite way to approach this would be from the captain position if it's going to be a Chicago Bear?
For a contrarian standpoint, I think it's just use Khalil Herbert. He's not that different in price compared to Fields and Moore, but it's different enough where you're saving about $1,500 off Moore, almost $2K and some change off Justin Fields. Allows you for a slightly different build. We're still talking about a very run-heavy team. He was the feature back last week. Who knows what the split looks like between him and Roshan? But if he retains that same role, you could see some upside here. He's going to come in negatively leveraged in our tools because of the split. But again, I think this is the most volatile point in the whole projections today, trying to decipher what Chicago does with their running backs. So from a contrarian standpoint, those of you in Millie Maker style contests, there's a 500K to first tonight. I think my favorite contrarian option for the Bears is Khalil Herbert.
Talk about Washington here first, though, guys. You heard early in the show I was talking about our Sims tool and the contest generator and the single game Showdown plays tool that Matt and I use every single day that there's a Showdown slate, and I know many of you guys do as well. If you're looking to get a free week of it, I mean free week, legitimately free week of every single tool that we have on the site, not just one or the other, not you got this, but you need this in order to use this. No companion pieces. Every single, it is a $200 a month package. Otherwise, you want to get an entire week for free, click the link in the description or chat for Owner's Box Fantasy. You go over there, you sign up. Now, the good thing about this is the minimum deposit is $10 if you want to get the free week. However, they have up to a $500 first match deposit bonus. So if you have the means to do so, would certainly recommend taking advantage of it. Number two, they've been overlaying like crazy. Okay. Some big overlay with some big prizes up top and some very big flagship contests. All right. So if you're playing somewhere, you go, well, what's the best contest to play in? It's always going to be the one that overlays where there's dead money. Ben put it this way on Tuesday. Imagine if you had 14 teams in the NFL still making the playoffs every year, but instead of 32 teams, there were 26 or 27, right? Your odds of making the playoffs become significantly higher unless you're the Bears. But in this case, at least if you're making remotely decent lineups, you are going to put yourself with a far better opportunity to get in the money. And our contest simulator, we have it set up for Owner's Box. We have ownership, projections, all of our tools built for Owner's Box, obviously DraftKings and FanDuel as well. But you're getting everything. Ownership, player projections, top stack tool, the boom bust tool, premium Discord, lineup generator, contest generator, simulator. The post-contest simulator you guys will love. You can go in there and see how every lineup did, what the pre simulated ROI was, what their actual ROI was, if that lineup was, you can learn what people are doing. Ben and I do this on the Tuesday podcast show to really get familiar with what's working and what's a bad lineup and what's a good lineup and what's a good build and how people are playing it. All of this stuff you're getting for free for the entirety of the week. And as I always mention, fellas, you do it on a Thursday. You do it on a Thursday or a Sunday because you get Thursday night football. You get Sunday morning football in London. You get Sunday main slate, afternoon, showdown slate, Monday night football, and then Thursday night football again. So if you're not in yet, link in the description and in chat. You don't need a promo code. Just use the link. You get a free week. You get up to $500 first match deposit bonus. And you get some very cool super flex contests over there at Owner's Box that have been overlaying in contests that you have a much better shot of cashing than anywhere else. All right, so we're talking about the Washington Commanders here. I mentioned the target shares. I wasn't mentioning those target shares, Matt, just to suggest like, oh man, we should stay away from this team today. Obviously not. And actually last week, we saw a bit of a more concentrated target share between these guys against the Philadelphia Eagles. Sam Howell definitely figured it out a little bit. But the target share was number one, Terry McLaurin at 26%. And then 23% was Jahan Dotson, 20% Curtis Samuel. Nobody else was north of 7. So a lot of that went to those guys. Here's what I've learned about Sam Howell. We knew this from the beginning. I talked about it last week. If he can get the ball out early, he's going to be able to play well, or if he has a clean pocket. He's been horrible under pressure, and that is an issue. I thought the Eagles would get more pressure on him. They didn't. But if he has a clean pocket, and this is not a particularly good Chicago pass rush, he's going to be able to pick opposing defenses apart.
Absolutely. And I was with you. I was surprised that Philly didn't generate more pressure against Sam Howell. It's tough to say with the pass catchers here and the target shares. I think McLaurin's still dealing with that injury he got in the preseason. And what a dope Ron Rivera is, getting Terry McLaurin hurt in the preseason. And I mean, not going for 2 last week. Like, what, you really want to? This is Riverboat Ron. Like, what? He's now coward Ron. You don't go for 2 at the end of the game, and you take your chances against Philly in overtime. Like, are you kidding me?
I know. How do you not go for that?
Your team is clearly at a talent deficit, and you want it. When your team is like that, you need to play in these volatile, like, you want to reduce the amount of plays and take your chances when you have them, not give Philadelphia more chances to beat you to a pulp. So then they go to overtime and get clearly beaten. Like, Riverboat Ron, he needs to be fired. I mean, he got fired for a reason. He's just a retread coach. Anyway.
At the very least, he needs to be stripped of that name.
He's Coward Ron to me now. I don't call him Riverboat
Cowardly Ron Rivera.
He's Cowardly Ron Rivera. But Terry McLaurin, I think the reason we haven't seen full alpha target share is because Ron Rivera's a moron and got him hurt in the preseason. And he's not the same player right now. I don't know at what point he's going to be healthier. We'll see here, but I think we do see some ebbs and flows in target share. If you're trying to make bets on just the best pass catcher, I think it's similar to Chicago, where I still want to bet on Terry McLaurin's target is target share long-term because of that talent. But you can save a lot of salary going to Dotson. You can save even more salary going down to Curtis Samuel. The roles aren't different enough right now where I'm just going to prioritize getting up to Terry McLaurin. I'm honestly probably going to spread them fairly evenly and just try to play a lot of these guys. Again, my first read on the slate was to play a lot of 4-2s, 5-1s, have them in multiple lineups with Sam Howell, just the way the game environment shakes out, pricing shakes out. It's pretty easy to get these guys. And say you even want to double stack Sam Howell with McLaurin and you use Sam Howell or McLaurin at captain. It's pretty easy to do that. You can run one of them at captain, use like a cheaper Curtis Samuel, and then all you need to do is punt once. You can use like an Equanimeous St. Brown, a Tunyon, or even a kicker or defense. And this is pretty easy to do. So I think I'm going to be overweight to just about all these Washington pass catchers.
It makes sense. It absolutely makes sense. And another one, so you don't have to play any positions here. It's not like you have to play a tight end. How much of a Logan Thomas type do you think you would get to, given that he is actually someone that Sam Howell has looked to in the red zone? If they're marching up and down the field, the Logan Thomas touchdown equity is going to be pretty decent. By the way, Can you believe that on the entire season, not just last game, but on the entire season, listen to this red zone usage for the Washington Commanders. Terry McLaurin has 0 targets inside the red zone, not inside the 10, inside the 5. He has 0 targets through 4 games inside the 20. The leader is Jahan Dotson, Cole Turner with 4, 3 inside the 10 for both of those guys. And then Curtis Samuel, Logan Thomas, Brian Robinson with 2. Not a single red zone target for Terry McLaurin this year.
Like, are these teams? I mean, I think they're both trying to lose, but what are we doing?
I don't think Washington's trying to lose at all. It might appear that way on paper, but I don't think they're trying to lose at all.
I don't think Ron Rivera is such a bad coach that I'm not sure you would know if he's trying to lose or not. I think he's trying to win, but his decision-making actually appears as if he's trying to lose games, like giving Philadelphia overtime chances to beat you, not using your best pass catcher in the red zone. Those look like teams that are tanking, decisions teams that are tanking would make, but it's just Ron Rivera outsmarting himself on the field. Anyway, and
cowardly Ron at it again.
And Bieniemy's been bad too. I mean, geez. Now I understand why no one ever wanted him to be a head coach. Holy smokes. Terry McLaurin doesn't have a red zone target. Like, what are we doing?
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's insane. It is insane. But like, this has to change at some point, right?
There's no excusable reason for why Terry McLaurin shouldn't have some opportunities in the red zone. Yeah. Yeah. Now, of course, he does lead the team in air yards and all of that. He's a great play today, but I just thought you'd find that interesting that he hasn't seen a single target in red zone through 4 different games. Yet Cole Turner has 4 of them, 3 inside the 10. Jahan Dotson, who's don't get me wrong, good player, but he has 4. There have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 14 red zone targets. Not a single one of them has gone to McLaurin.
Yeah, the Cole Turner one's like more surprising than anything to me. I don't know what this team is doing. But yeah, we'll see how my bankroll does after today, but I'm going to make some bets that Terry McLaurin gets a red zone target at some point this year. I think it just has to happen. We have a long sample of McLaurin being the best receiver for this team. I like Dawson to your point. I think he's completely fine. I would view him more neutral, price adjusted. I don't think the ceiling is quite as high as McLaurin's just from a talent standpoint, but he's a good player for former first-round receiver. Curtis Samuel, I view him pretty clearly as the third option for this team, but he has that weird usage, that gadget usage. They'll get him involved on carries, stuff around the line of scrimmage, try to let him create yards after contact on his own. And I don't think the Bears are going to be able to stop any of these guys. To your point, Logan Thomas is really interesting. Every single year, the guy gets hurt, and then they have a decent amount invested in John Bates and Cole Turner. They're both at least draft picks for this team who played reasonably well when on the field. And I think, all right, maybe with the injury and Bates and Turner playing decently, maybe Logan Thomas doesn't handle this every snap role, but every single game he comes back from the injury and he's out there almost every single snap. So to your point, I don't think he's a guy we can ignore either, especially with the tight end usage around the red zone. For whatever reason, Bieniemy and Ron Rivera seem to think they have a Travis Kelce on their team, but really it's just Cole Turner, John Bates, and Logan Thomas.
Yeah, I guess that's the good thing here. So no De'Ami Brown for you?
As far as the really deep pass catchers on Washington, I think I would rather get to the Chicago guys. De'Ami Brown, 25 snaps, 19 routes. That was honestly surprising. There wasn't like one player primarily came at the expense of. You look at McLaurin, 63 snaps, Dawson, 56, Curtis Samuel, 54. Like they all just kind of rotated on and off the field. De'Ami Brown, I think, is fine, but I think he's firmly in that Equanimeous St. Brown, Tyler Scott territory. Do you think he's a little better than those guys, or do you view him similarly?
I don't really see much difference here at all because, you still have the old potato chip that's going to get probably 20% of snaps as well. There you go. And you got, let's not forget Byron Pringle. Remember Byron Pringle showdown slates with the Chiefs? The only touchdowns he ever scored, I think, have been on showdown slates.
He's just one of those guys. He's like Marvin Jones on Thanksgiving. backup tight ends on showdown slates. Just one of those things you can bank on. He'll score tonight. Watch.
That's right. He's going to score for sure. The only thing with De'Ami Brown is like, do we get some opportunities for him downfield? Usually if you're talking main slate, you and I talking a main slate, I'm not too worried about that. Like I'm far more focused on target share and all of that stuff. Like the last thing I want to do is hope for a 2-target game and a deep ball for a Deshaun Jackson type, just, throwing that out there on a main slate, because you'll get killed if you play that type of game. On a showdown slate, having that opportunity at a very cheap price is a lot more valuable. The difference is De'Ami Brown, to your point, isn't priced like some of those other cheaper guys. He's a lot more expensive than them. So that's where the problem comes into play. He's had one deep target throughout the entirety of the season. Pringle's had one as well. Wow, Hal's not throwing deep at all. But 3 of them have gone to Terry McLaurin. No one else has more than one. I guess what I'm getting at here is no, I don't see a huge difference there. Is there any incentive to pay up for that when you could pay down for the other guys? What's the ownership? Let's do this. What's the ownership and how do the tools see these guys? Because that could make a decision for us.
They're all bad. Which I mean, like the slate's not tightly priced.
No.
A lot of constructions you probably don't need to get these guys. They're more like Millie Maker plays to me. Or there's 500K tonight.
De'Ami Brown getting virtually no ownership, so there's that. He's negatively leveraged.
They all are. Every one of these cheapies we mentioned is negatively leveraged.
You're probably just better off going to Tyler Scott.
He's cheaper. Or do we just find our way up to Antonio Gibson?
Yeah, I don't hate that. Because
he's really cheap.
Real cheap. Trying to see if there's anyone else in this range. What did Cole Turner's snap count look like last game?
It was horrible.
Yeah, he wasn't even on the field. 6 snaps. I only mentioned that just looking at touchdown equity for some of these guys, right? And sometimes that's it's not there. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like Byron Pringle, you're hoping for what? A target?
Yeah.
It's tough. I do like Brian Robinson quite a bit, though. I can tell you that much. What is he positively? Yeah, he's got nice positive leverage there. 11% optimal captain, 13% captain ownership. That's fine. I could honestly, what is he? Optimal, almost optimal 50% of the time at the utility. You know why I like Brian Robinson? Because this could develop into one of those games where Sam Howell doesn't need to throw the ball a lot. This could be like a 23 pass attempt game from Sam Howell if the Chicago team can't stop Brian Robinson. His rushing yard prop was at 61.5 yesterday. Seemed very low to me.
I agree with everything you said. This should be his best game script all year long, or at least this might be his most favorable game script all year long, all 17 games. And he's not that expensive, 9,200. He's also the clear early down back. Gibson is playing a lot on pass downs, which makes sense. It's his skills. Overall, he's a better pass catching back, but Robinson hasn't been like iced on third downs either. So there's a lot of ways for him to get there. His touchdown expectations higher than it's ever been. And I agree with you. There's a world where Washington doesn't want to use Sam Howell and his erratic pocket presence back there, where they just ride Brian Robinson to 20 carries. I like him quite a bit. I like Gibson too. And that's not any slight to Robinson. It's just the pricing on these two guys, man. You've got Gibson priced like barely ahead of players like Byron Pringle and Equanimeous St. Brown. I don't hate using these two guys in the same lineup together.
I was going to ask you that. You beat me to it. I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, I mean, you're spending about $1,000 if they're not in the captain spot. It's very affordable backfield in a smash spot.
Man, the whole Gibson Robinson thing could be very viable. Let's just say, you mentioned earlier, if you're using our lineup generator, you can go in and you can kind of like adjust the scores, right?
Yeah.
I can pull it up and show. If you adjusted the score Washington up 6, Chicago down 6. I bet you would get some Gibson Robinson lineups, because in that case, you're talking about, blowout type win for Washington. Robinson gets the bulk of the opportunities. But what happens if Gibson comes in and gets like a 12 or 13 touch game? I remember they did this against the Eagles last year. They handed the Eagles their first loss of the season when the Eagles' run defense was terrible before they pulled a couple guys off the couch, Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh, and kind of shored that defense up a little bit, at least better than it was in week 10. They ran the ball 48 times in that game. 48 times in that game. Is it out of the realm of possibility that we see 30-plus rushing attempts for Washington today? Because if we do, let's just say that happens and that's how it plays out, then Gibson's probably going to get at least 10 touches.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see that at all. And if the game gets out of hand, maybe you just see a little more of a split between these two guys. I like them both in the same lineup. I have no problems with that, like using them both. I think you could even see Gibson be an interesting contrarian captain. He's definitely going to flip the build for you if you do that. I echo everything you said. Like the backfield a ton.
Look at that exposed. By the way, guys, lineup generator. If you're not looking to spend if you're on a budget and you're playing with a budget, lineup generator's $14.95 a week. I promise you, it's 100% worth your time. You saw what Mike did there. You can discard the lineups you don't want. We have it for Showdown, main slate, all that good stuff. And select the type of lineups you want in there. And you can see how chalky they are or contrarian. You can see the optimal projection. On main slate, you can set all your stack types. You can swap players out. You can lock players in. Very, very, very cool tool for sure. You can adjust the score that you think it's going to be for Showdown slates too if you want to build it on a certain narrative. And then after you save your lineups, you can upload them straight to CSV. It's optimized for mobile as well. But I'm looking at this. Mike just saved the 20 lineups, went in. You can see the lineups, but you can also see exposures. Again, link to that in the description if you guys wanted to check it out. Very, very cool tool. If you don't have a lot of time in the day or if you're on a budget or playing smaller contests, it's awesome. Check that out, Matt. Brian Robinson, we were on it. Go to the top, Mike. Brian Robinson, 67%. Antonio Gibson, 46%. Would you look at that?
Doesn't surprise me, man. Given these prices, it doesn't surprise me.
The more I think about it, the more that build makes sense compared to a lot of other builds. People are going to want to get to a lot of like McLaurin and Dotson, and I think even more and Kmet and all of those guys. We have a decent amount of Kmet in these lineups, and they're going to want to get to Robinson as well, obviously. I'm wondering how popular the Robinson-Gibson pairing is going to be today.
I've been wondering that too. Do you think people are going to be averse to that situation and click Byron Pringle and Equanimous St. Brown instead? I legit don't know. But I do think people are scared of like 5-1s.
That's what I'm saying. I do too. I think they're scared of 5-1s, and I think a lot of people hate playing two running backs in the same lineup.
I agree with you.
All right, so actually, let's do this. You want to build a lineup out before we go?
Yeah, let's do it.
Your thoughts on defense and kickers, by the way, and my quick thoughts. I think it's all fine. I think it's all perfectly fine. Obviously, I prefer Washington defense. Prefer Joey. Is it Sly as their kicker right now? Joey Sly?
Yep.
Over the Chicago side, but you're never going to hear any argument from me on any of this stuff in these games, but clearly prefer the other side.
Yeah, for some reason, Cairo Santos is more expensive than Joey Sly. Don't know why, but I mean, I agree with you 100%. The only thing that confused me was the pricing on these guys.
All right,
yeah,
let's do it. You're up, I think, right? You're up at captain. I think I went last time first.
I think so. Let's do Brian Robinson.
All right. Let's go with Antonio Gibson.
Oh,
I mean, we have to do it, right? We have to see how this looks.
That gives us a ton of salary. I'm going to throw Fields in. I think he's the safest option for the Bears, the engine of their offense.
Who'd you go with? I'm sorry.
Fields.
Okay. I'm plugging Cole Kmet in here.
Okay. So this is the thing that you're going to run into with these lineups. If you don't play a bear named Roshan or Fields, you're going to end up with someone negatively leveraged. I don't care about that. I'm still going to play guys like Komet too.
I mean, hey, if you want, we can take Komet out.
I love Komet.
Okay. I was going to say, if you want, if you're playing a large field tournament, going like Robinson and Gibson and then Fields with the only pairing as a Khalil Herbert or a Roshan Johnson, that would certainly be interesting. And we don't have to do it in this lineup, but I'm not opposed to that idea either.
No, I like Komet. I was just trying to justify if you see like our tools, you're taking a really negatively leveraged player. It's like, well, if you play more than one bear, you're basically taking a really negatively leveraged player, and how I think you can build around it. Anyway, I think we have enough salary left to play Loughran.
All right. I'm going Commanders D.
I like it.
The only thing I don't like is that we max this out. This is clearly a single entry, smaller field type build.
Agreed.
Even though we have Robinson and Gibson, I still believe this will be a relatively popular lineup. So
I think you're right. If you want to save some, play like Joey Sly.
Yeah, there you go. Right. That's the other thing you could do is you could just, instead of Loughran, go to like, how much cheaper is Dotson or Curtis Samuel, or go down from Commanders to Joey Sly or somebody else. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Dotson and Loughran 2v2 could give you something pretty nice.
Most people, if you're hand building, are absolutely going to want to max it out and go with Loughran over a cheaper option. Like Dotson's not much cheaper. Actually, yeah, he's a lot cheaper. How much different is Dotson? I want to wrap with this. How much different today is Dotson from Loughran, in your opinion?
I don't think it's very different. Samples growing of these two guys having a pretty comparable target share. So Dotson, I think, is really interesting. I mean, I just did a little 2v2. If you take out Loughran and defense, you can do Dotson and Herbert. Like, you can do some pretty easy stuff on this slate. Right. I like Dotson a lot. I think if we were building like a cash lineup, I would rather have the Dotson Herbert side of the 2v2 over the Loughran defense, if that makes sense.
Jay Lee, where's your betting show, Laffy? It's on the Odd Shopper channel. It's on our I have my picks for every game video came out last night. I'm about to record right after this one for tonight's game. Odd Shopper, ODDS SHOPPER. That's our YouTube channel. Check it out. Yo, we're going to be at 100,000 subs by like early November. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, hell yeah. Love that.
Check out Matt's betting stuff for college football too. I watched your betting you overtime the other day, and you're like a computer. It's funny. I got to the end of it, and when you were going over your recap, like all of your best bets, it was just algorithmic, man. It was you were locked in like a robot. You guys should check that out. Some awesome content that you and Ben have been doing for those and all the other stuff we've got. Matt, we got to do one last thing before we go. We got to hit a couple super chats we've got because I missed them. Actually, Michael Perlman. Michael, I would have hit that, dude. You didn't have to use your free super chat as a member, but I appreciate you. So Michael Perlman super chat us earlier, and he's been a member for 24 months. He used that as well to get our attention. My fault, dude. Should I trade DJ Moore for Calvin Ridley?
Yes.
You would do it?
Yes. Would you?
Yeah, because I think this is a buy low for Calvin Ridley, and it's a sell high for DJ Moore.
I agree 100%. Ridley's on the way better offense.
Yeah. And clearly Jacksonville has not clicked even a little bit yet. They have to figure something out eventually. Appreciate you guys hanging out. Thanks to all you coming in, hitting that thumbs up and subscribing to the channel, leaving comments. All that stuff goes a long way for us. I love to read the comments as well. If you're listening in podcast form, appreciate you too. We'll see you guys back here tonight, live before lock action. I'm sure you got some stuff to do on the Odd Shopper channel, college football stuff. I got some stuff to do over there. We'll see you back here later. And don't forget, 11 Eastern, less than an hour from now, marathon matchups, NFL strategy show. Eric Lindquist and myself breaking down all 10 games for the main slate. Don't miss it. We'll see you over there. Appreciate it, guys. Peace.